Hi everyone, Sam Pearson here. I love narrative play for tabletop wargames, especially a game like Warhammer 40,000. For me, nothing beats weaving an epic tale as two armies clash on the battlefield, and even better if it's part of a campaign or a wider ongoing story. While I worked in the Warhammer design studio at Games Workshop, I had the pleasure of designing many different narrative books and rule sections. For example, one book I led the design on was this one, Vigilus Defiant, which was the first big campaign book for Warhammer 40,000 8th edition. I also did a lot of narrative work for Age of Sigmar. For example, I designed the original Anvils of Apotheosis, and I designed Path to Glory both in 3rd edition and its most recent iteration, 4th edition. So I love narrative play, and I think it gets a bad rep, but maybe not undeservedly so. You heard that right. Maybe narrative play deserves the bad rep it gets, at least sometimes. I imagine we've all played games of narrative play where it boils down to rolling dice on a table that results in some unit somewhere on the battlefield, either yours or your opponent's, taking D3 mortal wounds. And if you think that can be pretty uninspiring at times, well, I agree with you. So this video is going to be the first in a 3-part series where we dive into what makes narrative design good or bad. And I'm going to be arguing that at its core, good narrative design is about enabling meaningful player choice. Narrative play should not just be about rolling on tables, it should be about empowering players to make fun, immersive, impactful choices that are derived from the world building. I want there to be a system that incorporates exterminatus, and I, as the player, want to be the one who pushes the big red button and has to live with the consequences. And to put this to the test, we're going to take an area of narrative games design, one that is very, very tired and stagnant, and that is the two-player narrative campaigns. You know the drill. Tree campaigns, linear sequences. You've seen it all 1,000 times before. We're going to take that area of narrative games design and see if we can design something new and fresh and exciting by making meaningful choice central to its core design. And you guys are all invited along for the ride. I encourage you all to design along with me. So that's the scope of the series. And when I say we're going to design something, I mean that in the fullest sense. We're going to take the design from the very, very beginning right through to the very end. If you follow the steps, you will have a fully finished PDF at the end that will look something like this, fancy graphics and all. But it won't be my design, it will be your design, and it will be ready to share with the world. But I'm jumping ahead of myself a little. This first video starts right at the ground level, and it is going to be about how to design meaningful choice for your players. This is not just going to be crucial for us making narrative systems in the later videos, it is also one of the key fundamentals of games design. Meaningful player choice is something that underpins every game there is. War games, role-playing games, video games, you name it. So the applications of this video are going to stretch far, far beyond just narrative games design. After all, legendary games designer Sid Meier famously said, "A game is a series of interesting choices." Well, how do we design a choice that is interesting then? The answer is surprisingly simple. I'll see you after the jump. So my argument is that good narrative games design is all about giving players fun, meaningful choices to make, especially those that feel in world, ones that put you into the shoes of a commander, say of a Warhammer 40,000 faction or an Age of Sigmar faction. And in the later videos, once we've learned how to design meaningful choice, we're going to cook up some of our own systems to show the strength of putting that right at the heart of its design. As we're going to be designing a 2-player narrative campaign, and more importantly, trying to improve on this area of design, which is very old and very tired, a good starting point is to look at what's already there and to critique it. Critiquing is one of the most powerful skills a games designer can develop, because being able to identify the problems in a design is the first step to improving the design. So you should always be critical of every games design, even your favorites. Not you, Outlanders. You're perfect the way you are. So let's talk about 2-player narrative campaigns first and see the cause of this stagnation that they're suffering suffering from and how they can be improved. So the two-player narrative campaign probably needs no introduction. They have been in games like Warhammer 40,000 since the very beginning. They usually comprise of 3 to 5 battles that are connected in some way. Underpinning them, there will often be a story thread that slowly plays out, and also there might be some rules mechanics that connect the battles too, such as gaining a reward in one battle that you can use in a later battle. Here is a page taken from the 3rd edition Warhammer 40,000 rulebook, released back in 1998, and we can see some structures for two-player campaigns that I'm sure you will be familiar with, things like the tree campaign that we'll go through in just a moment. And here is a page from the 8th edition 40k rulebook, released almost 20 years later in 2017, with almost the exact same advice. This is what I mean by the stagnation of design. We see the same frameworks rolled out again and again. The linear sequence. Here, Battle A leads into Battle B, and then Battle C, and so on. A tree campaign. This is similar to the sequence, but the exact path taken will vary due to who wins and who loses. And then the matrix campaigns, where the scenario is determined by the players each essentially picking rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, and the combination determining the scenario. I want to quickly add while I've got this up on my screen, this tree campaign has always bugged me ever since I was younger. Andy Chambers, he's my boy, he was my hero growing up. But this tree campaign is so bad. Take a look at this. You play 2 battles and the outcome of the campaign is wholly decided by the first. If the defender wins the first battle and the attacker wins the second, it's still an overall win to the defender. These 2 outcomes here should really be flipped around so that the second battle decides the campaign, not the first. 2-player campaigns should always be decided by the final battle. Otherwise, why continue playing? But I digress. These campaign frameworks, they're not necessarily bad, and in many ways they're time-honored traditions, but they could be so much better. And my biggest critique of them is they lack any meaningful decision on the part of the player. If I was to imagine my hypothetical dream campaign for a moment, it would be one that puts me into the shoes of the commanding officer, especially for a game like Warhammer 40,000, where the lore is one of its biggest draws. I want to live and breathe in that world, even if just for a few moments because it's a scary place, but I want to be put into the same positions that the characters in the stories are, and I want to make the same decisions that they do. I want to be the Imperial Inquisitor who has to make the near impossible task to abandon a world and call down Exterminatus. I want to be the Necron Tomb Lord who triggers the awakening of a long dormant tomb world. And I want to be the Eldar Corsair Captain who finds a new path through the webway to discover a long-lost maiden world. And when I talk about these things, I don't just mean I want to read about them. I don't want the events to happen in the background of a linear sequence, nor do I want them to be one of the outcomes of a tree campaign. As I said before, I want to be the one, as the player, who gets to push the big red button and has to live with the consequences. So these systems incorporate no meaningful decision making, and that's why I think this is an area ripe for some innovation and some fun new designs. Now let's look quickly at the last of these frameworks, the Matrix campaign. To explain how this one works quickly, both players choose one of the different options and their 2 choices combined determines the scenario. So for example, if Warlord A chooses to advance and Warlord B to reinforce, the no mercy scenario is played. You might be thinking, this system gives players a choice, right? They get to choose to hold, to advance, to flank, or one of the other options. That's a narrative choice, isn't it? And I would say, yes, it is a choice, but it's not a meaningful one. And here's why. Firstly, the player's choice here influences the outcome very little. You pick the option you want, but that only gives you a 1 in 5 chance at actually getting the scenario you want. Terrible odds. And maybe more importantly, do I really care enough about playing one of these scenarios over the other? No, I don't think so. The no mercy scenario is just a regular scenario. It's not really this big aha if another player is forced to play it. I've got no particular desire to play, say, Patrol over Cloak and Shadows, nor would I gain myself an advantage doing so. So this is a choice, but it's not a meaningful one. I, the player, lack agency, and that's because my choice is very unlikely to affect the final outcome, and I also lack motivation, because I don't really care which scenario we play over the other anyway. I would say this is really a random scenario generator masquerading as player's choice. It might as well be one big table that you just roll a dice on. So if this choice isn't meaningful, how do we design a choice that is? The band of heroes descend the steps deeper into the dungeon. They walk forward, torchlight illuminating the corridor in front. Then they are confronted by two branching paths, one left, one right. Which do they pick? If you've ever acted as a games master in a role-playing game, you've probably presented your players with a choice like this. And if you have, you'll know that this is never enough for them to make a decision. They'll stand around for a few moments, scratching their head, and then they're going to start asking you some questions. Can my character use their perception to see if they smell or hear anything from either path? My character is a dwarf. Can he detect if the floor slants up or down slightly in either direction? My character searches the walls for any markings or clues. Do they find any hints at what lies ahead? There is a lesson here, and this is the first thing to cover when it comes to meaningful choice. Players need information. They crave information, and without it, the choice is akin to rolling a dice or flipping a coin. It's a choice made blind, which is arguably not a choice at all. But information isn't the only ingredient. There's a second and third one required too. Let's say that with our dungeon exploring example, the game master tells the players the following. Down the corridor on the left, you see the glint of gold in the darkness and hear the growling of beasts. Down the corridor to the right, you feel a light gust of wind and can smell trees and grass. They are hinting that the left path holds a hoard of treasure being guarded by a monster, whilst the right leads to outside, somewhere where they could rest and camp for the night. In a situation like this, what will the players decide? Well, there's nothing stopping them from picking both options, and seasoned players will likely choose the right path first. They'll go outside, they'll camp, recuperate for the night, and then they'll go down the left path afterwards, taking on the monster at full health. And that's because this choice is still missing the second ingredient, which is the most important overall, the dilemma. For a choice to be meaningful to a player, you need to present them with some sort of dilemma, something for them to figure out. And the dilemma, it can take many different forms, but they're all quite simple when you boil them down to its core. And I'm going to categorize them into three types: the scarcity dilemma, the trade-off dilemma, and the prediction dilemma. You can think of these as forming a triangle, and any given dilemma will fall either at the points or somewhere in the middle. The scarcity dilemma is when the game gives the player a limited resource to manage. You see that in many OSR role-playing games, where things like the number of torches the adventuring party can take with them is limited. We could apply that straight away to our example with the two paths. Here the players can do both options, but resting for the night will expend the torch they currently have kindled, meaning they'll have one less torch for the rest of the dungeon delve and are not going to be able to get as deep into the dungeon as they could if they just press forward without camping. Already you should be able to see that we're getting to a choice that feels meaningful and interesting. Push on and take on the monster now, or spend some of your precious resources camping the night first and recuperating. This is a dilemma. But when it comes to the scarcity dilemma, you needn't think of resources so literally. Most common resource is having a limited number of choices or picks. Let's move over to video games quickly. In the game Hades, you're presented with multiple paths at the end of every stage, but you can only pick one of them. So here, the resource is picks. It's just impossible to pick both paths. And remember, to make it a meaningful choice, it needs some information too. So in Hades, to help you pick the path, the game will tell you what sort of reward you will find down each of them. Moving on to another roguelike, Slay the Spire. Here you will see the same dilemma but played out with the rewards. After every battle, you are rewarded with 3 cards to add to your ever-growing deck, but you can only pick one of them, no matter how many you desire. A dilemma. I would say this is the scarcity dilemma in its purest form. 3 cards, all exciting upgrades for your deck, but you can only pick one. So which do you choose? A second form a dilemma can take is the trade-off dilemma. This is a choice that comes with both an upside and a downside. I'll stick with Slay the Spire as it also has examples of this sort of choice and is an all-around excellent game. Except for you, except for this guy, I hate you. But other than that guy, it is a great game to study from a game's design perspective. If you travel to one of the unknown sites on the map, indicated by the question mark node, the game will often present you with a choice. Obtain a random relic, relics being powerful magic items with passive abilities, but if you do so, also obtain a random curse. Curses being bad cards placed into your deck that have negative effects when drawn. So here the dilemma is take it or leave it. Do you want something that gives you an advantage and a disadvantage? Well, you need to weigh up both sides and make a call. A dilemma. The last type of dilemma I'm going to cover is the prediction dilemma. This one is best for PvP games because here both players are making decisions to leverage an advantage over their opponent and trying to guess what their opponent will do in an attempt to outsmart and outmaneuver them. Now, in any PvP game, you are constantly making lots of micro decisions on how to outwit your opponent. Say as you take your turns in a game like Warhammer 40,000, or when you leave some of your lands untapped in Magic the Gathering going into your opponent's turn so that you can counter their cards. But I think the prediction dilemma is best presented in cases where both players are making decisions simultaneously. Take, for example, the setting of maneuver dials in the X-Wing miniatures game. Here, both players have access to shared information, that is, the board state, and they are using that information to try and glean an advantage over their opponent when choosing their ship's maneuvers. What I love about this sort of decision making is it leads to lots and lots of mind games, bluffing, calling your opponent's bluff, double bluffing, and all of that jazz. So these are the three simple forms that a dilemma can take. And I said that you might find dilemmas that are actually somewhere in the middle of the triangle rather than one of the points. Often these blend into each other, and that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. For example, you could imagine a choice using the scarcity dilemma, so say 3 cards and you can only pick one, but then one of those cards having both an upside and a downside to it. So it's the trade-off dilemma nested within the scarcity dilemma. So you can do lots of fun and creative things by combining these different sorts of dilemmas in creative ways. Now there is one final ingredient, and that is excitement. No matter which form the dilemma takes, the outcomes need to have repercussions big enough to motivate the players to make the choice. That doesn't necessarily mean all choices have to be to receive something good. Even choosing the best of 3 curses is an exciting decision to make. What we are trying to avoid is player apathy, where a player simply doesn't care to make the choice. This was my big criticism of the Matrix campaign presented earlier. It is an elaborate mechanic for choosing a scenario, but I don't think a player really cares that much over which scenario they play to make the decision an exciting one. In summary, the 3 key ingredients for creating meaningful choice in games are information, dilemma, and excitement. And you can think of these as providing the following. The information gives players clarity. What will your decision lead to? The dilemma gives players tension. You can't have your cake and eat it. You're going to need to decide one way or the other. And the excitement gives players motivation. I really want this, or I really don't want this. So that was a bit of a Games Design 101, which I hope you found interesting because, as mentioned, designing meaningful choice is really one of the key fundamentals of games design. It underpins every type of game out there, and its applications are as far-reaching as they can be. This is not just about narrative play, this is about all aspects of games design. For example, Spearhead utilizes the trade-off dilemma in 2 different ways. The first is with the battle tactic cards. Each can be played in one of 2 ways, to score victory points or as a powerful command ability, but using one forgoes the other, creating a dilemma for the player. Secondly, the way the double turn works in Spearhead has a trade-off introduced that wasn't present in previous editions of Age of Sigmar. If you go second in one round, win the roll-off and elect to go first in the next round, i.e. take a double turn, you forgo drawing new battle tactic cards altogether. Another dilemma revolving around a trade-off. You can also use this knowledge of how to craft meaningful choices to critique bits of games design that you don't like. For example, I am against the complete removal of war gear points that was introduced in 10th edition 40k. And the reason is it has made choices such as, should I equip a Space Marine Sergeant with a plasma pistol or a bolt pistol, a meaningless choice. The plasma pistol is better in every regard. There's no reason to take the bolt pistol. So presenting that as a choice to the players is only one that's going to frustrate them. In the next video, we're going to be using the things that we have discussed in this video to build our own narrative frameworks from scratch. But in the final part of this video, I thought it would be fun to go back to those existing 2-player campaigns, the linear sequence, the tree campaign, and the matrix campaign, and let's see if we can improve upon their designs by injecting some meaningful decisions made by the player into them. First up, let's look at the matrix system again. It feels so close as it has a player choice at its core, but as we've already examined, that player choice is a hollow one. So let's remedy that. If we look at the dilemma it is presenting, it appears to be the prediction dilemma. 2 players vying against each other, but you never get that feeling because there's no advantage to glean. If I choose to flank and my opponent chooses to this one, and we get the scouring, is that good or bad for me? Did I win or lose? I don't know, so that's the first thing to fix here. Let's colour these as red for a Warlord A victory, and blue for a Warlord B victory. And if both players choose the same option, we'll just leave that as is, as a standoff. Then let's give the winning Warlord a boost of some sort. For the sake of this example, let's say they get to give a unit in their army a new battle honor from the Crusade rules. That sounds like a pretty cool prize to put on the line for me. Now I'm motivated to make this choice at least, but it does still feel very random. It still really is just a game of rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, which is fundamentally a game of pure chance. To fix that, we could incorporate some aspects of other dilemmas. Let's say, for example, the campaign is now a fixed 4 battles, and for the campaign you can only choose each maneuver once, as in each option is now a scarce resource that you must spend. Now, as the campaign progresses, there will be more and more chance to double guess and bluff your opponent as the pool of options for them narrows and you can start to predict their actions. So hopefully you can see how quickly we can improve these systems by adding in some excitement and a dilemma. Moving on to the tree campaign, the first thing that strikes me is it could be the winner who picks which of the 2 branching paths the campaign progresses down, rather than having one fixed to either player. If we were to do so, we need to add a dilemma for them too. Perhaps there is a trade-off down one path. It comes with a big payoff but also the risk of a setback of sorts, whereas the other is a safer route. Lastly, for the linear sequence, we could add in some limited resources to manage. Perhaps players each pick one of the battles to gain a boost in command points. Remember, we need to give them some information to make that decision, so we assign a different reward to each battle and present it up front to inform their decision. So just like that, very quickly, we're starting to improve on these systems, and hopefully you can see how easy it is to do. We still don't have any of those really big narrative decisions yet. There is no Exterminatus being unleashed in the middle of the tree campaign, but don't worry, that's what we're going to be adding into our own frameworks that we're going to build up from scratch in the next video. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry for the little break that we had in videos over the past few weeks. I've got some exciting things in the works that I can't wait to share with you. Let me know what you thought of the video down in the comments below. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers. I cannot believe it. Thank you all for your support. It really means so much to me. Well, until next time, bye for now.